Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today, I am with Kristen Nichole, who is a South Florida-based movement artist, social and community psychologist, and entrepreneur. Kristen earned a certification in group fitness instruction from the American Council on Exercise and a pole instruction certification from XPERT in 2019. Kristen also earned a Ph.D. in community and social psychology with a focus on identity development and storytelling from North Carolina State University in 2020. Kristen is the founder of Polecology, a platform for liberation through the art and psychology of sensual movement. Welcome, Kristen. And I'm so privileged to say that I have also been a student of her when she recently came through to Los Angeles to do a workshop on bend and flow and sensual embodiment. And I happened to come across her page, the Polecologist PhD. And it's just to me it's just so amazing to meet folks who can break barriers of being more than one thing. You can be a pole dancer, and you can have your PhD, and you can be a mama. You can be all the things. You don't have to pick one. So yes, Kristen, so excited to have you on today. Before we begin, I'd love to ask, what is it that you are celebrating about yourself?
Oh, you know what? This is really timely because I am celebrating um, freedom. I recently experienced a divorce and I am a legally free human. So I'm celebrating being free. Thank
You know what? Congratulations.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, because I feel like our impulse is to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it's like, actually, thank
Yeah,
you for choosing you. So I think that's
thank
a
you.
beautiful celebration.
Thank
We should
you.
throw a party for that.
Yes, I have been meaning to throw a divorce party. I'm excited for this life transition.
Mm, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I've been having a lot of conversations lately with folks who are going through these transitions, whether it is with their job, their career, and especially their relationships. It's just it's been a common theme and something that I have been reflecting on, especially on my own journey as an entrepreneur, with entrepreneurship as my sacred form of activism, so that I can do the things that actually feel in alignment with my soul's higher calling, is asking myself, okay, what is it that I'm willing to sacrifice or to make sacred so that I can make spaciousness for whatever is next in life? And so, um, yeah, like, what is it that you're willing to make sacred? And so, anyways, this is the constant journey of just like, I feel entrepreneurship as a way to get to know ourselves more intimately is just walking on this path of yeah, the sacredness, and for you and for me as well, using sensuality as our means toward liberation. And so with all of the roles that you carry and all of the titles, I always love to like strip those away and just ask, how is it that you would describe your medicine?
Like stripping away titles. mm, I would say that my medicine is storytelling. I think that stories are powerful and we tell stories in different ways. I tell stories with my body. I tell stories as a researcher with qualitative research analysis. Um, and I tell stories with words. And so I think sharing my story and helping people as students of my work and movement to connect with their own stories, to tell their own stories is my medicine.
Yes, and also learning how to tell stories with our body, I feel is so important because I just notice, at least for me as a storytelling coach, that whenever people come to me with the desire to build confidence so that they can speak their truth, I tend to see that the stagnation is not necessarily in their throat, but it's in their hips and the ways that colonization has disembodied us from being able to move so freely versus just like, when I used to do movement workshops, which I'm so excited to bring back, and I would have folks um, embody a certain deity or just like make any movement. It
Yeah.
tends to be from their arms up, and that's it.
Hmm.
Has that been your experience?
That's interesting. So I'm going to start by speaking from my own personal experience because my experience informs my work. But this is very timely. I actually just finished discussing this. But like I said in the beginning, I'm celebrating being free from divorce. And I'm also just honoring me. I've experienced like a lot of traumas in my life, sexual assault. Um, so one thing that I've noticed is when I connected to movement originally, like, well, pole movement specifically 5 years ago, um, it was the sacral energy that called to
Yeah.
me. I feel like I have that, like, that's just natural to me. It's also what inspires me, it's what I've been most attracted to as a mover. But as I recently experienced being disembodied as a result of sexual assault, I found that I was here a lot. And for the listeners, my heart space was closed. My All of the tension was in my neck and shoulders, and I was really closed off in my chest and my shoulders. And so as I've been working through just kind of releasing this trauma from my own body, um, I'm more here. Like I've been doing a lot of like initiating movement with my shoulders. I've also been a student of West African dance fundamentals, and we're specifically learning dance styles like Dudumba and Susun that are present in Guinea and Mali and other parts of West Africa as well, but those specifically. And that movement is a lot of like it's Susun is more like sacral energy, like hips, but Dudunba is a lot of just like stepping, stomping, jumping, proud shoulders, proud chest. And so, and like just kind of like giving thanks to the deities, giving thanks to our ancestors by like opening up and using the hands. And so I've been naturally like doing a lot of that movement, like definitely. And so as an instructor, I've seen it all. I've seen like pent up energy in the hips. I've seen like lack of mobility in the shoulders, right? And there's so many different perspectives. There's the perspective of like, physiologically, a lack of mobility and flexibility needs to be improved. There's also the spiritual perspective where you've got like some pent up energy that needs to be released. And then there's the psychological perspective of just kind of like what traumas live in your body, what needs to be released somatically and through movement. So I've seen it all.
Yeah, the ways that I came into whole actually was it about 6 years ago now, was after I was fired from my job working as a rape crisis hotline counselor and a community organizer. And they said I don't have a filter, and I get it. It's very true. Hence the path that I'm on
Totally.
today. But within 2 weeks of me getting, I say, liberated from the nonprofit industrial complex, I was so ready to get back into the community and do the thing. And that's when I got involved in transformative justice, which, for those who are new to it, it's about exploring alternative means of violence intervention that don't rely on the criminal justice system, that don't rely on 1-800 numbers, and that don't rely on 911. And me being in Long Beach, this is my community, the Southeast Asian community in particular, was not even comfortable reaching out to the police. And so as a result, I was like, okay, well, we're going to create a community care model where we can call on each other when there's violence that happens, more specifically, domestic violence. Uh, and what ended up happening for me is that within 2 weeks of me getting freed from my job, and I was so ready to continue the work in my community, my hips completely locked up. I couldn't even walk. It was so painful for me to go to the bathroom. And I was just finishing a yoga teacher training that was meant to support survivors of sexual violence. And I was supposed to have my final that weekend and go on a retreat. And instead, I was forced to stay home. And I remember being so angry at my body. And I was like, but I have work to do. And I realized in that moment, granted, I realized that my ancestors' spirit, God, was telling me I needed to be still. I needed to be still because I had spent my whole life in movement, in fighting, in fight or flight, which is so common for those of us who are children of immigrants, or have just experienced our parents needing to constantly work to where stillness is a threat to the body. And what ended up happening was it naturally moved out of my body. After I saw a doctor, they're like, we can't do anything. And after a week, I was fine. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I needed to connect the teachings I was receiving in yoga about the chakras, my root and my sacral in particular. Like, I needed to apply that to my own healing. Because as a survivor myself, I had never looked at my own stuff. I had intellectualized my way out of my own suffering and oppression. And so where did I end up a week after that? At a pole dancing studio. By the way, I only went to this studio because it was like a Groupon deal for me to do a bar class. And the bar class was full, but they happened to have pole next door. And I was like, okay, this isn't really me, but I'll try it. And next thing you know, I was a work study intern for a year, so I could take classes for free. But oh my God, to hear the stories of these women and their own journey of sensual liberation, how pole dancing supported them with transitioning out of unhealthy or toxic relationships. And for me, I realized, like, wow, I told myself this story that I'm not a dancer, that I'm not sexy. And I also equated pole dancing as something that was only meant to serve the male gaze.
Yeah.
And here we are in the studio, like almost naked, just learning how to seduce ourselves. And that has informed so much of my journey today. So I would love to hear from you. Like, what was your own journey into pole, and also your ancestral lineage? I love how you're reconnecting with West African dance, and how all of this informs your movement of polecology.
Yeah. Thank you. And I your story is sacred, and I thank you for sharing with me. I was listening and can relate to you in many ways. Um, I know you said being a child of South Asian immigrants, um,
Southeast Asian. Mhm.
Southeast Asian immigrants, and you talked about just kind of like what I understood or interpreted as like this going through the motions, this survival mode, which I
Mhm.
can connect with. And I think so many of our listeners will be able to connect with that as well, especially those who are also Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Um, but yeah, I think that's what's the power of sensuality, and it has been for me. Like, I'll share my pole story with you. So I
Yeah.
also was one of those that got into pole by way of a Groupon with a friend. I didn't
Yes.
sign up for a pole group, hon. We did it together, my friend and I, when we were in graduate school. And just speaking with and thinking back of on conversations with other friends of mine that have experienced the grad school industrial complex, like if that is something that has been named, it can leave students feeling very disembodied, very disconnected from self, very disconnected from spirit, um, isolated in many ways because you have to sit down and write this huge paper, this dissertation, and it takes you away from so much. You know, it's a sacrifice that we have to make for our work. And I definitely experienced just, oh my God, being on autopilot in survival mode in that program, although it was a wonderful program and I'm so grateful for those that I connected with, it changed my life. But Pole was my safe space from just experiencing that in that environment. And also I was married and I became a mother through my pole journey as well. So pole was just this, and it still is this creative outlet for me to connect with myself and express myself, to alchemize my emotions, to create art, and tell stories with my body. So I've been in pole for 5 years now, and I absolutely love it. And the way that it connects with sensuality is so important for me because I feel like when we slow down in many of my activities that I teach at my workshops and even like in one-on-ones in private are informed by sensuality. They're informed by psychology. Like I will have my students sometimes just like, so we always ground before any class, workshop, one-on-one. And some of that grounding can include like, I'm looking at my faucet right now, studying water and how it flows, which can also be like a very grounding activity to just disconnect from being on autopilot or disconnect from work and just watch something and connect with it and allow us to be fully present to experience witnessing this moment of water flowing. So um, that informs the way that I move. My movement philosophy is very much so go with the flow in the direction that your body wants to move, how your body wants to move, and really giving yourself permission to slow down, to really like try and explore to figure out how you can express yourself. But first, we have to connect with ourselves and be present in order to learn it is that we want to express. And that's a huge place to start.
So, did you, when you were in grad school, what was the transition into going into your PhD and choosing to make psychology and sensual movement as your focus?
Well, my focus for grad school, my PhDs, my specialty, my expertise is in identity development and storytelling, not through movement. Movement at that time was just kind of like my own therapy while I was doing all of this research and gathering qualitative data, doing interviews and focus groups with people. And my dissertation was set, I gathered data at a critical literacy program, like a youth nonprofit. So it wasn't movement. I didn't center it on movement. Movement at the time was like my own like outlet. And also it was a side hustle because I was teaching privates out of my home to make ends meet. I was doing so much on autopilot, and like pole was definitely a way that I supplemented my grad student stipend while I was in grad school. And then it just grew into this platform and a community where I travel and I get to connect with other artists and we teach together. And it's just been really amazing.
So, can you describe then what exactly is Polecology?
Yes. Polecology is a platform for liberation through the art and psychology of sensual movement. And so we center like predominantly BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color artists. And this platform is a way for them to monetize their art and connect with people who really want to learn from them. So promoting artists of color is like very important to the platform. It's also a community of people that are very passionate about moving in ways that really express who they are, not just like your traditional fitness or your traditional pole class where you're just learning like some different like skills and shapes, but you're really kind of exploring like your own sensuality, your own psychology, and creating your own movement style by learning from other artists that have done the same.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so Polecology is what recently hosted the embodiment workshop that I went to. And so you have classes all over the United States at this point. And so I'll definitely put the link to Polecology in the show notes. But I'm also, I want to dig a little deeper to explore how you have felt like this path has help to heal your lineage, because I never witnessed the woman in my family move their bodies, at least like their full bodies with intentionality. And so, what has been your own experience in witnessing that within your family?
Oh my goodness, this makes me laugh. This question makes me laugh because I feel like I have had to like not call myself out, but I guess more of like a calling in of like where did I get my movement from, my movement pathways from, and like since taking this West African dance program and really trying to use this as a way to connect with my own roots as a person within the Black diaspora, I have learned that much of my movement is like very Eurocentric and a little whitewashed,
Mm.
but it makes sense
Ooh.
because I've studied like as a child I've studied ballet, tap and jazz. I am trained in very like Western dance styles. So when I first started taking like these when I first started this program, I was like, oh my God, it was like a whole nother language for me because I'm used to speaking very Western with my body. With like, I would say, um, I will acknowledge that I do have the roots in me and they have shown up previously in my movement, but I just really didn't know how to connect with that or have a language to describe where it came from. But now it's like I know where it's coming from, like, and taking the classes and really kind of like connecting with movements that I've seen my people dance. Like, I know twerking is something that is becoming very popularized in the United States and globally. But like these movements where we're like, my mom calls it popping your butt. But we're like very past hip movements and vibrations in that area in our sacral space. It comes from West Africa, and like I'm seeing it in the movements that I'm learning, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember like doing this in high school, doing this with like when I was a kid and not really knowing where it comes from. And now it's like this is a very spiritual practice. And so that's how it shows up. That's what I've seen. And I'm just excited to explore more.
Yeah, and because of the ways that we equate pole dancing with seduction, how
Mm,
is it that you have been able to navigate uh navigate that, or challenge that perception?
yeah, this is important because I have experienced both sides. So, for our listeners that are new to pole, there's like a lot of discourse within the community about intention, and there's also like people with different intentions within our community, different focuses. And I personally feel like all are valid. We have entertainers and performers that perform for an external gaze, predominantly the male gaze, some might say, a male gaze, some might say. And then we have those who are more Maybe they do perform, but their focus is more internal and it's just an expression, and they're inviting the audience to witness them in their own world. And I have experienced both. So I've been a performer, a virtual digital content creator and performer, and my focus was external. And that was empowering because it was like, especially being online, as a digital creator, it's like I have so much power over like what I want to show and what I don't want to show, you know? But I think where, as I've traveled over the last 5 years in different areas of this community in different styles and different focuses, where I've landed is like internally. Like I'm very like internally, my energy is directed inward. And what you witness at this point in my career in dance is me loving on myself, and I'm inviting you in, and it's really my gaze. Oftentimes when I
Mm.
dance, my eyes might even be closed, and I might open them like to look at the audience like for a moment to say, hey, I recognize that you're here, but this is me practicing bodily autonomy. This is my own body awareness. This is my own sexuality that I'm connecting with. Even like in my promotional content that I share with my Instagram community, it's very common that you will see my reflection in a mirror. Whereas instead of just like seeing me performing for you, it's like I'm inviting you into seeing what I'm seeing. Because this is really a love affair between me and myself. So yeah, it's been exciting and empowering and liberating to navigate both lenses, I would say, or both areas of
Yeah.
this community, of this industry. And I think both are very powerful.
Yeah, I agree. What I love so much about being in these spaces is that there can be one person next to me who works at the club and identifies as a sex worker, and then a person on the opposite side of me is a doctor or a lawyer, and in that room all of these titles are stripped to where we are in this practice of reclaiming our own bodily autonomy. And so let's talk more about body autonomy. What does that mean for you? And how is it that Pole has been a part of reclaiming that?
Yeah, I would say, to simply put it, it's like the popular catchphrase, my body, my choice. This is my body. I get to do with it what I want. I get to use it how I want. It's not a object for the male gaze. It's me as my human self experiencing life through this vessel. And I think Pole is definitely um, a woman, femme identified, like dominant space, which is powerful and beautiful because women and like femme presenting individuals like myself, um, we experience a lot of like, I like to call it like the heaviness of the male gaze. And I intentionally
Mm.
say the male gaze and not men because you don't have to be a man to have the male gaze. I think at a certain point in my life when I was younger, I had the male gaze, and I've evolved in my thinking and in my lived experience to really like be more embodied within myself and to be more human, and thus seeing everyone else as more human. And so bodily autonomy allows me to really ground and connect with my sense of self, my sensuality, and the way that is expressed in the stories that my body tells. I think I might be able to speak for just about any pole dancer who's also like a digital content creator or an instructor that uses Instagram or social media broadly to promote their work. We get DMs, we get, people
Yeah.
with the male gaze coming in, like infiltrating our space, like asking us to dance for them for free or all of those. And it's like, this isn't for you. Like, even as an entertainer, like this is my art that I'm monetizing. Like, I'm moving the way I want to move, and you get the privilege of experiencing that. And so for me, that's all under the umbrella of bodily autonomy. Like, in owning ourselves and reclaiming our bodies and ourselves, we get to decide how we want to move, how we want to express, and what we want to do in taking up space in this way.
Whew. Yeah, I have felt torn on this journey, oftentimes, of how much of my own expression of movement, particularly sensual movement, I should put out there, because I have also received criticism or feedback. I'm going to be more specific, from ex-lovers, that I'm doing it for attention. And why am I putting my body out there like that? If I was really confident, I wouldn't have to do any of that. And how is it that you would respond to folks who who are in a sensual movement practice, or at least are longing to be to participate in that, but fear the repercussions if they were to put themselves out there, while also honoring that, like, not, you don't have to, but I know, at least for me, it's like, it's my form of creative expression. But yeah, I'm like, oh, is that what people are really thinking?
Wow, this is so timely. I've I've just had this conversation with someone, but I would say number one, I've been you. I know what it feels like to want to express yourself, but also want to appease a person or people in your life that are important to you, or maybe they have some type of power over you. Maybe they're helping to clothe and feed you, or you've built a life with them. And that's a really tough position to be in. I think that when you reclaim your power, you recognize something that is stripped away in these interactions with these types of individuals that are dealing with their own biases, their own like lived experience of how they were raised and their worldview. But when you take your power back from them, because that's them taking that power from you can recognize that you are a force. And at the end of the day, I personally feel like if a person is asking you to not be yourself, because really it's, if this is something that you want, this is a part of you. And no one who truly loves you would ask you to not be yourself. And so you have to recognize that you are a force to be reckoned with. And oftentimes people are afraid of that because it makes them have so many questions. Like, if I have to share, um, if I get the privilege of experiencing this person that I love sexuality and they're sharing it in different ways with the world, is it really special to me? But your
Hmm.
sexuality is yours. It doesn't belong to your lover. It doesn't belong to your family. It does not belong to your students. It does not belong to the clients if you are an entertainer. Your sexuality is your own power. And taking that power back, you get to decide, bodily autonomy, who you want to share it with and how. It is your choice. And if somebody is in hesitation to your choice, they're not right for you. Sometimes you have to close one door or one portal so that you can open an infinite amount of possibilities of portals. Take it from someone who has closed the portal. And in doing so, so many portals of opportunity opened up for me. Sometimes people have to do their own self work, their own growing on their own. And maybe they might come back and realize, hey, what was I thinking? But it's not your job. Your job is you in reclaiming yourself and owning that you are a force. That's what I would say.
Snap, snap, snap to that. So much resonance. I actually have a beautiful former client of mine who's a doula, a birth worker, and um, and she actually came to me because she saw me post one of my videos a long time ago, and had this desire to also share her movement practice. But um, and we've actually talked about this publicly, so I think I can safely share this story. And hopefully there's people listening that can relate to this. There was this huge fear that if people know that I pole dance, I'm going to lose clients, that I'm going to be outed from, I'm going to be seen uh, as a traitor to my spiritual community.
Mm.
And so I'm just, maybe it's safer for me to keep this part hiding. And so slowly through our time together, she was like, you know what, I'm just going to put up this is a 15-second clip of her on a pole. Next thing you know, she had at least 3 people from her conservative spiritual community reach out to her in secrecy, asking, how is it that I can learn to move the way you do? And she also got a client as a doula. So,
Nice.
right? And so I reflect on, wow, what if I never put that video out there? Who would have been missing out on, like someone like her would have been missing out on this beautiful opportunity to impact her community in ways that she didn't even know was possible. And so for any of you who may feel like you're holding yourself back from that form of expression, like, yes, it's a practice that's for you, but I feel like, especially with the work that Kristen does, and even the ways that I am actively, quote unquote, putting myself out there, it's with the intention of inspiring others to say yes to their own healing journey. So, yeah, so much resonance. Thank you so much for sharing that. With that being said, because pole dancing is often equated to just something that is meant for women, how is it that we can make it a more inclusive environment for those who identify outside of that?
That's a really good question. I think that um, I'm thinking specifically about like those folks who may identify as femme presenting but non-binary, um, and even like cis men. I've seen some beautiful work from cis men in our community, and I think that these individuals or these communities of individuals are definitely represented or underrepresented, I would say, but they're out there. I think that we have to think in in storytelling. We have to think about the ways that pole is marketed, the stories that we're telling in the marketing, and whether or not a person who does not resonate with that story feels invited in. That's number one. But also, I want to spotlight people who I personally learn from, who identify as non binary, who are talented, incredible movers. One of which is someone that I've taught with. They're amazing. Their name is Tony, floating through spaces on Instagram. They're like out here. And I could name drop so many other individuals as well. They come to mind because I've taught with them and I've also learned from them as well. But they are out there. It's just this dominant story of Eurocentric femininity, I would say, with like the hair tosses and like, the specific dance styles that we see that are really Eurocentric, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there's more that
Yeah.
is just underrepresented by this dominant story. So I think we just got to keep telling our stories. We got to keep
Yes.
telling our stories as well. I'm femme presenting, but I identify as non-binary myself. And so a lot of that is showing up in my movement as well. My movement is evolving so much after just like becoming legally liberated and like also healing from sexual assault and being a mom and being non-binary and taking West African dance. My movement is evolving. And I hope to be a part of a movement to just kind of like show a different story than just like hair tosses and like hips. Like the shoulders can boogie too, the head can boogie too. We can
Yes.
jump, we can be masculine, we can be feminine, we can be agender in our movement. There's so many opportunities and possibilities.
Yes. So being an entrepreneur, a mama, an educator, how is it that you seek balance? Like, what are the things that you are currently doing to stay rooted in these transitions and just your everyday life? And
Oh,
also, what is it that you have had to learn to release along the way?
oh my goodness. So I juggle a lot, but I have so much support. So my ex-partner and I, we co-parent our daughter, and that's so helpful for the both of us because we give each other a break. And I have an incredible village, and he has an incredible village too. Like my daughter is loved like by so many. So that's number one. I have support, I have resources, and I recognize that um, other single mothers might not have that, some don't, but this is what has been so incredible about pole. I have connected with other pole moms, and we can connect with each other. We relate to each other. We ask each other questions. Have you felt this in your abs, like after having the baby? When you put like little things like that, community is so important, and we can create community every day by just sending that DM or like asking that friend out for coffee. Like things that in the past, like before my divorce, I would probably hesitate to do. But now, like, I'm making those connections. So, support and creating community is so helpful. Number two, I just started this practice. I take an afternoon because I work from home with like the research work that I do outside of home. I'm blessed in that I get to work from home. And in the afternoon, like I have a new practice of soaking with Epsom salt in the tub. I'll light two candles and I'll play some music. And just 10 minutes, like 15 minutes sometimes, I'm just soaking in the tub. 20 minutes, really. So
Yeah.
that, like, and I'll shut everything down, like, which is number three in how I do this, boundaries. And I think you asked what have I had to say no to. So
Hmm.
in lifting up the boundaries and saying yes to the boundaries, I've had to say no to the people pleasing and thinking like, oh, I have to, oh, I don't want to lose this connection, or I don't want this person to perceive me a certain way. I don't care anymore because um, I could go on and on about like divorce and all of the things I've experienced, but I lost a bit of my self confidence through that experience. My self esteem took a little hit as well. But in healing and pole and movement have such an important role in my healing. I've reclaimed my self confidence, I've reclaimed my self esteem, my sense of worth as a person. And when we lift up those things and we basically like it's like filling yourself up. Like if I hate to think of us ourselves as vehicles, but for the purpose of this, just a moment. It's like
Vessels.
you're refueling. You're refueling
Yeah.
every time you
Hmm.
like lift up my self-confidence. Oh, I'm not on E anymore. Lift up my
Yeah.
self-worth, my self-esteem. And now once you're completely filled, your tank is completely filled, you don't need to people please anymore because you've pleased yourself. You don't need to get
Mhm.
energy from like external factors. You have that internally.
Mhm.
And so all of those things brought me here in this space right now.
Yeah, I totally feel you on the vehicle metaphor, which is why I like to say we're all walking plants. And
Ooh,
yeah, we really
right.
are. And so when we learn how to nurture ourselves and water our roots, we then become that stronger um that it's like we're when I learned so much from Mother Nature. Mother Nature is like one of my biggest teachers. And as you know, I've been on this farm and I went hiking through the woods, and Montez, who is this incredible the farm owner, a queer Black woman who has been teaching me so much. And she was showing me these redwood and sequoia trees that were chopped down in order to make lumber and to clear the forest. And around these stumps were these smaller trees that were growing to protect this elder tree. And this is actually called a fairy ring. And so what happens is that because this elder tree, this grandfather tree, had created such a strong foundation, it was able to nourish the smaller plants and trees around them. So even though this tree was now an ancestor, this is how it was continuing its legacy. And there's just something that's a lot more attractive as well when we are pouring into ourselves. You'll notice that other seedlings will appear because they see you as the place to nourish themselves and to regain that strength. So,
I
just
love
another
that
metaphor I wanted
so
to
much
offer.
better. I love that
Yeah.
metaphor so much better. Yes, we are walking plants. We have to water
We really
ourselves.
are.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
beautiful,
yeah.
June.
Yeah. And I always love to bring the metaphor of the oak tree and how during Hurricane Katrina, the oak trees were the only trees that did not fall because underneath the soil is where they were supporting one another by binding each other at the root. And so this is why, y'all, it's so important that we do this work to strengthen ourselves, our spirituality. And what you will find in that process is like similar to the movement that Kristen has created, even the work that I'm doing with your story medicine. The more that you are protecting your sovereignty, your bodily autonomy, and your time, is when we're actually shifting the culture of martyrdom, of self-sacrifice and of people pleasing, by giving others that permission to also choose themselves over and over again. Yes. Okay. So for folks who are just beginning their sensual embodiment or pole journey, what's a ritual practice or words of wisdom that you can gift folks with?
Go with the flow. Just like go with the flow and whatever that looks like for you. I think, and I've experienced this as well. We all have. We are so inspired by artists that we see online and we want to emulate them. We want to move like them, but well, that's getting that focus. That focus is external and not filling ourselves up with water as walking plants. And taking the time to go with your own flow and figuring out, how does my body move? What are my movement patterns? Do I typically initiate movement with my hips, my head, my fingertips? Like, do I like strong holds or do I like to do more leg waves? Like, asking those questions throughout your first year and beyond. Like, this is what's going to inform your own movement style, your own patterns, your own pathways, so you can be your own person, reclaiming yourself through bodily autonomy and sensuality. So just go with your own flow.
Yes, I love that. And I'd love to add to that is, if you did not have words, how is it that your body can tell that story? Mhm. So, my last question that I love to ask all of my guests is, if you can envision yourself as a future ancestor, looking back on your journey today, what is it that this elder ancestral badass version of Kristen, what is it that she or they would have to say to you?
This is a good one because I often talk to my younger self, but I don't yet have a connection with my future self. I think I'm gonna have to think about this and come back to you perhaps. Does
Mm,
that,
let's speak from our sacral and get out of our heads and into our body.
oh, okay. Okay, let's do it. My future ancestor self. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. If this version of Kristen can speak to you in this moment, or even speak to that younger version of yourself, what is it that they would have to say?
Maybe what I said earlier, like you
Yeah.
are a force. Just be you and own it.
Yes, you are a force, and also go with the flow and trust your body and its wisdom, and know that support is available if you are feeling that stagnation, if you are looking for guidance, for mentorship, and for community. Kristen, where is it that folks can go to find you and your work?
Yes, anywhere, but mainly Instagram. You can find my work on Polecology, Polecology. It's like pole and psychology, but without the psych part. Polecology,
Mhm,
and that should take you like everywhere you need to be. I also have a website, www.thepolecologist.com. So again, like psychologist, but pole in front.
mhm.
Thepolecologist.com.
Great. Yeah, we'll go ahead and link those to the show notes. Thank you so much, Kristen, for doing the work to make your ancestors proud, including the ones before us and the ones that have yet to come.
Thank you, June, for like allowing me to share space with you.